Welcome back to Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. I still have with me in the studio Professor Bola Akintenuwa, Director General of the Bolitac Center for Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Dr. Ndidi Nwaneri, Public Policy Consultant and Visiting Scholar, Loyola University, Chicago, in the United States. And Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. Well, we'll try to re-establish contact with Comrade Waba, the President of the Nigeria Labour Congress. As soon as we're able to do that, the conversation with him will continue. But right now, we'd like to start with a discussion around some of the issues raised by Comrade Waba. Well, let me start with you, Ndidi Nwaneri. Today is your birthday. Let's start with that. Happy birthday to you. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Many happy returns.
Thank you.
But how old are you now? Don't tell me ladies don't disclose their age.
No. I'm very honest about my birthday. I mean, I'm 16.
16. Professor Akintenuwa, Dr. Nwaneri says she's 16.
I'm waiting for the response. Let's see what you do to yourself.
When someone is born, it's only the parents that will eventually tell him or her of when he or she was born.
Okay.
Consequently, if she says she's 16, she's not likely to be wrong. Because when we talk about birthday, what are you really celebrating? You can be 80 years old, but have a youthful mindset.
Yes, they didn't tell me what part of my body is, which birthday. Is it my soul or my body?
Precisely.
He didn't specify. And we're running out of time.
So in this case, if you think you are 10, you are 10. If you think you are 16, you are 16. And I can tell you that nothing prevents Ndidi from still sleeping by the side behind the mother in the village.
Precisely.
Because there's nothing like an old age for anyone. So happy birthday, Ndidi.
Thank you, Prof.
Let's move on. Let's move on. Well, Dr. Nwaneri, you know that we have a tradition here. Every birthday has implications. So after the program, we will celebrate your birthday. But quickly, the issues raised by the President of the Nigeria Labour Congress from the tragedy on Friday to the crisis in Kaduna State with Labour and the intervention of the federal government. And he talked about minimum wage. He was now going to talk about the proposed removal of subsidy or deregulation of the downstream sector. So what's your take on some of the issues he has already addressed?
So first of all, I want to join Nigeria in expressing my sadness and dismay at the accident that took the chief of
Army staff.
Chief of Army Staff. It's such a loss because we don't have that much going for us. That is the truth. We need more than we have. And on that level, the expertise, the years of training, the expenses, the investment in persons, that is a loss at the policy level, at the country level. Then the personal loss to the families, to the society. It's a psychic harm to us too. We're not in a very good place mentally and emotionally in Nigeria, given all what is going on. And this is another thing that we have to deal with as a society. But my concern is that, so I hear what he says. He also has my position. It's sad. It's a sad loss for the entire country. But I really do wish that the country as a whole, the government, had taken their time, had slowed down a bit more with regards to the funeral. That's my position. I feel that even though we are aware that there was no foul play, for the sake of doing things properly, they should have slowed down, done proper postmortems, and actually investigated the site a bit more thoroughly for the satisfaction of not just this generation, but posterity. That is what I think. I feel that it should have been slower. It should have been a bit more meticulous. We should not have deferred to religion for funeral. That is on the one hand. Then a lot of Western press had drawn parallels between, had highlighted the fact that a rival group had killed the head of Boko Haram, and a few days later, we suffer this loss. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, they also mention that Kos was assigned or was recruited or was appointed in January, and it's such a short period, added to which we have had 3 military-related air accidents that cost us people. This is the 3rd one. Now, my question is, you see, one of the things that I hardly ever hear from Nigeria is the never again clause, where Nigeria says, even if we're going to die trying, this is not going to happen to us again. I don't feel that sentiment, right? I'm not trying to apportion blame to anybody, but I feel that the entire climate of managing such calamities could be improved upon. Again, not just for this generation, but for posterity. What I'm going to mention about the Kaduna crisis is, so I'm going to play devil's advocate. While we are aware of the fact that the teachers that were fired 2 years ago, as the comrade said, the teachers that were fired in education, the education sector shake-up that happened in Kaduna 2 years ago, he mentioned that the people still had not been paid, or they have not been paid, according to NLC-KADUNA. It's possible that they've been paid. Maybe the governor has another side to the story. But what I'd like to mention is the general thing, general climate of inflation on the one hand, reducing revenues, and his focus, the comrade's focus on, look, we should focus on internally generated revenues. So to recap, part of the governor of Kaduna State's argument is that 90% of the money that comes from the federal government goes towards sustaining the public sector in Kaduna that is made up of 100,000 people. That is on the one hand. Nigerians should also be aware, anybody that has engaged with the public sector in Nigeria knows that there's a lot of dysfunction going on. Even if you're an excellent worker, the system is such that we don't get the best outcomes from the public sector. So his argument is that, look, it is bloated. We have to reduce it. What I did not hear from the comrade is, yes, I understand that his mandate is to look out for his workers. And as an aside, very impressive thing that happened. Comrade is back, so what do I do?
Well, just complete your thoughts, and then we'll go back to him.
So one of the things that we have not brought up, we have not mentioned, is that one of the things that it was impressive for me at this particular event was that, or occasion, or this situation, was that there was a lot of solidarity. One of the questions I've always asked in Nigeria is, well, when the doctors have a problem with the government, I haven't seen too many solidarity strikes where people are like, look, on principle, we agree with what is happening. We're the federal government. This is happening at the state level. We're going to join. It's very impressive that there was a lot of cooperation, right, at every level in Kaduna State. However, what I have not heard from Comrade is, Comrade, what is NLC's plan for Nigeria long term? I have not heard that. I understand his mandate is to look out for his workers, but what is NLC doing for me as a society? So if you're saying that they should pay what they owe, a lot of states have fallen into serious financial crisis. You cannot ask somebody for what they do not have. So you're talking about internally generated revenue, and I hear somebody refer to the people, the political appointees, as capitalist confederates. The argument being that a lot of the money that is meant for the state goes to political appointees. That is an issue as well. But NLC is saying, pay us, pay us, pay us, pay us what you owe. We don't care how dysfunctional the public sector is. I don't know if that is looking out for my children's children. And I'm going to stop there.
Okay, well, Comrade Ayuba Waba is back with us, but we'll need to take, a break in another 2 minutes while we wait to bring him on. But Prof, just in about 2 minutes before we go on that break.
First of all, you did ask him about 6 questions, and I will rapidly address them one by one before I give you my own position. Question 1, you asked him to comment on the crash, the demise of the COS. And he expressed sadness, his condolences. I share the same sentiments. But the sadness, I will explain it differently when we come to the full discussion. Question 2, you raised the issue of absence of PMB, President Muhammadu Buhari, that the status of the Chief of Army Staff, Ibrahim Attahiru, should have warranted the presence of the President. Comrade Waba gave the impression that PMB had actually expressed his grief. So he didn't see that one as a serious point. I disagree with him completely. And the reason for the disagreement, when we are discussing the issue, will come to that one. Because basically, it clearly shows irresponsibility on the part of the presidency to think that somebody will go and die, to go and fight for Nigeria, all right? And then you will not see the importance of that one. But I agree with Ayuba Waba that it is not only the COS, but the members of the crew as well who are equally important. Your question 3 to him was that he was declared wanted by El Rufai. He responded that it was nothing more than propaganda. I agree with him that, look, at the end of the day, his point on going back to Section 20 of the Constitution was right.
Of the Labour Act.
Of the Labour Act, yes, you're right.
But on that note, Prof, we need to take a quick commercial break. When we return, you'll deal with the 3 other issues raised. We'll be right back. Don't go away. Now, Prof, let me come back to you.
Yeah, thank you. We were on your question 3. He was declared wanted, and he responded by saying that, look, politicians, grosso modo, are propagandists, that they always shift blames. So he tried to justify that one by referring us to Section 20 of the Labour Act and Section 40 of the Constitution. Section 20 Labour Act, where, for instance, he insisted on the procedure. His major complaint was not that the governor could not do X, Y, Z, but the mere fact that that section required that the NLC be consulted. And later on, in discussing the issue of open grazing, referring to the Loyola scholar, our own indeed here, differentiating between disengagement and rights. Now he is now saying that, look, El Rufai has not actually followed the procedure. I can agree with him to that extent. But you see, the issue is that when he raised the issue of IGR, I mean internally generated revenue, saying 60 billion was budgeted, and 16% for personnel there, he made the point. But you see, in my opinion that I will give at the conclusion of the last point he raised, I will draw your attention to it. Third-man committee, how far? He said, well, in the event El Rufai doesn't want to deal with that, they will have the right, indirectly, to come back to a fresh, strike. He didn't say that one directly, but at least he said the procedure is that they have given 5-day warning strike. Well, minimum wage. He said that those who were laid off 2 years ago had not even been paid. And then on petroleum, the issue of 385 per liter, he was not ready to go along with that. They're going to. And on alternative, which Dr. Nwaneri drew attention to, and I'm happy you also reminded him, he now says that, okay, look, there's nothing wrong in coming to sit. Now, my submission is so simple on this. El Rufai, when he laid people off in thousands, he raised the issue of incompetence. They were not qualified, they don't have certificates. Now, we are not talking about that. If they are laid off, what is wrong? But he raised the fundamental issue of a renting crowd. People were brought out by El Rufai to protest against the workers. Why should an El Rufai, for God's sake, bring about Sani Abacha style renting crowds to protest? No, all these things in the political governance of Nigeria, there is the need for seriousness of purpose, objectivity of purpose. So by the time you rent crowd, you expend public money anyhow. And at the end of the day, the people now refused. So on this, we must thank you too as moderator by bringing him to address some critical issues, obstacles to national development. Most unfortunate.
Well, Prof, thank you very much for that. Quickly, let me go to Yemi Adamolekun. Yemi, I'm sure you've been following the conversation. Yemi Adamolekun.
Yes, I have.
It's good to see you. We missed you last week.
Yeah, I missed being there. Happy birthday, Dr. Waneri.
Thank you.
She says she's 16. Oh.
There's no cake for you.
And Prof has given a very academic backing for an age assertion, so we're okay with that. So are you asking me a specific question, or you just want me to talk about what I think?
Yes, I want you to respond to the conversation with the NLC president.
Right. So starting with, as with everybody else, my condolences to the family of the late Chief of Army Staff and others that were on the plane with them. It is quite unfortunate. And there are a lot of conspiracy theories in Nigeria around military deaths, which is unfortunate, but it is the nature of the society where we live in. But again, as others have said, I do disagree with the NLC president that Mr. President is grieving on his own. He's Commander-in-Chief of Armed Forces. Chief of Army Staff was working at his request. And I still don't understand, quite frankly, why he wasn't there, nor the VP. I don't understand. The optics don't make sense. I don't get it. On the issue of stepping down religion for investigation, tricky, given Nigeria and how we take our religion. But I do agree that even if the bodies the plane crashed. So even if the bodies are buried, I don't think that investigations should be foreclosed if we're really serious about things of that nature. But again, as our nature, we don't seem to take these things very seriously. Lagos had to pass an autopsy law that people still find ways to avoid because they don't want to go through the process of a certain cause of death. So the comes with diabetes and these things are things that we unfortunately don't take seriously. Now, on our dear Labour president, I completely agree with Dr. Waneri, and I think maybe I wouldn't have phrased it as what is Labour doing for me as a citizen, but how does Labour not see that its advocacy for its workers is tied to the general context of governance? But how we see Labour, and I'll say how I see Labour as a citizen, is that Labour is only concerned about wages for its workers or things that they feel affect its workers only. Your workers are in Nigeria. They're workers within Nigeria. So the fact that Nigeria's governance and political structure is unaccountable and not transparent means that your workers can't get fair pay for their work, means their working conditions are rubbish. So constantly trying to separate that we're only advocating for our workers our main priority without really lifting up your head to sort of larger governance issues is one of the things I've never understood about Labour. But one of the things that I've also understood, and I guess recent history will show that, is that when Nigerians are tired, part of the strength that Labour has is the numbers. And in Nigeria today, outside of a religious institution, i.e. if Ansar-Uddin or NASFAT or Christian Association of Nigeria wants to put its members on the streets, Labour is the only body that can command street presence when it comes in terms of a protest. And we do know in Nigeria, power responds to power. That seems to be the only thing that gets our politicians jittery, is when they see people on the streets. So Labour has that power. It's power that they've used over and over to their own advantage. But recent history has also shown that when citizens are tired, they will not wait for Labour. Occupy Nigeria 2012 was a classic example. Labour was very late to the party. Citizens had set the tone. Unfortunately, because Labour also had a structure and citizens were just responding out of their anger and frustration, Labour took over the conversation and the conversation ended where it ended. Again, NSAS, classic example. Labour did not even join the conversation because, again, and I'm wondering how, maybe is there a police union? I don't even know. Maybe the police is part of Labour, so they couldn't really join because police are unionized. I'm not sure. But again, that also showed that without Labour, citizens were able to make their point known and make it known very strongly without Labour. Labour did not say a word, if I'm not mistaken, throughout that whole period. So again, yes, Labour can flex as they continue to, but ultimately when citizens are tired, they are tired. On Kaduna's matter, I think Malam El Rufai has been established severally. He's quite a smart man. So framing the percentage that personnel takes out of FAC was very deliberate. It was very deliberate in showing size, because if you say they are costing, 84% of FAC allocation, it makes it large. But Comrade now shows the parallel in adding FAC to IGR and saying, well, if you add additional money that members of Labour contribute to, it's only 16%. So it's not as bad as you're making it to be. But again, the point that he makes, which I think is also very valid, and I'm glad, because part of the Labour conversation sometimes is that you cannot sack civil servants. And that sense, and we sort of imply the point, which for me is a bit whatever. It sort of implies the point that when you work, you have planned out your life for 35 years, you've planned out your life to retire at 60, in a sense that assuming that once you're in a job, it's an entitlement for life. So they played down the role of incompetence, they played down the role of inefficiency, sort of, we have a job, we have it for life. But I am glad he sort of agreed that you can disengage them, just follow process. I'm not sure, Malam is also quite known for being sort of quite particular about public service processes. So I don't know what happened in there around why they didn't follow the process of disengaging them that led to this. But I also think, when we talk about propaganda as well, Malam's statements around economic sabotage, sort of the words that he used when he was looking for the Labour leader. And I'm like, people went on protest. Protest is protest. So framing it as economic sabotage is, I don't know. Anyway, the language of that I thought was very interesting. But again, we will see a bit more of this. And I think the Labour president has hinted to that regard, that we have agreed that for as long as states don't pay minimum wage, especially given this context, we have agreed on states where these protests will continue. So I think the Nigerian Governors Forum really need to pay attention to this, that it's not just Kaduna. I think he mentioned Kwara, I think he mentioned Taraba, where we can begin to see some of these issues. And then lastly, I completely disagree with the Labour leader around the governor saying, well, instead of us having to pay back our loans, then let us increase the fuel price for pump price. And I think that's part of this thing of a larger conversation. Governors borrowed money. What did they use the money for? Studies have shown that a lot of them did not use it to pay salaries. There are ongoing complaints about how money, lack of transparency, state budgets not being public. Lagos doesn't have an audited or doesn't have the line items of its budget in the public domain. So these are the types of things that I believe for Labour needs to advocate, because ultimately, if you're advocating for increase in salaries and want your workers to be paid more, then you must be interested in the budget of the state. You must be interested in the line item. You must be interested in how they are spending money, so that when you're asking for more money to be spent, you have it within context. I don't see Labour championing that conversation. So this conversation around governors paying their money back, they should pay that money back, and it should be very separate. And I guess maybe I agree with him on that point. They should pay the money back, and it should be very separate for a conversation around increased fuel pump prices. But again, NNPC continues to be opaque. Petroleum industry bill continues to be unpassed. So all these things are connected. And until we connect all of them within a larger governance framework, we'll continue to pick and choose the battles that we're fighting. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Yemi. Very quickly, our next subject, we've already discussed it at length, but if you still have additional comments, let me just take this subject. The remains of the late Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Ibrahim Attahiru, and 10 other officers who died in Friday's ill-fated plane crash has been laid to rest, while the Chief of Defense Staff has directed that an Accident Investigation Bureau board be constituted to unravel the immediate and remote causes of the unfortunate accident. The nation mourns the death of its general. Arise correspondent Ferdinand Duroa has this report. Okay, we'll take Ferdinand's report after the break. A short commercial break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. I still have with me Professor Bola Akintenuwa, Dr. Ndidi Nwaneri, and Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director in Office of. Let's take that report by Ferdinand Duroha.
Wrapped in Nigeria flag, the remains of the late Chief of Army Staff and the 10 other military personnel who died in the ill-fated crash in Kaduna arrived at the presidential wing of the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport. It was received by senior military officers before the burial party set out for the National Mosque and the Nigeria Air Force Headquarters Protestant Church, where prayers were offered for the repose of the dead. At both religious places, the clergies delivered messages of hope.
May this kind of tragedy, Lord, take a leave from us, that we may continue to serve this nation, especially in this challenging time of insecurity. Grant us the courage to stand in the face of evil and defend our fatherland.
After the religious prayers were offered, the procession moved to the National Military Cemetery, where a state burial was accorded the fallen heroes. The officers received full military honors, coffins draped in Nigerian flags, firing of volleys, wreaths laying and burglars blowing the last post. There were also eulogies.
These were moments I will forever cherish. He had a distinguished career and the unique privilege of commanding with distinction along the tactical, operational, and strategic levels of military engagement in the Nigerian Army. These positions afforded him the unique opportunity to express his determination, energy, resourcefulness, professional endowment, and strength of character. Quite significantly, he showed his patriotism and loyalty to the unity, security, stability, and well-being of the nation. He was truly a fine officer and a gentleman.
A period that witnessed the deaths of 11 brave, dedicated, and committed officers and men of the armed forces of Nigeria in an ill-fated air crash on 21st May 2020 in Kaduna. Indeed, these were absolute gentlemen and were one of the most respected and disciplined officers of men who sacrificed their lives in the service of our dear nation that will never be forgotten. These fine gentlemen had a glorious career in the armed forces, in the course of which they served the nation gallantly in several capacities.
The remains were laid amidst more tears from family members, relatives, friends, colleagues, and other loved ones. Now, General Attahiru might have had a short reign as the 21st Chief of Army Staff, but his time as the Army Chief is already spoken of as one which the welfare of his men was top priority. Ferdinand Duroha, Arise News.
Report there by Ferdinand Duroha of Arise News. Very quickly, I think you all have commented on this particular issue because that was where Comrade Waba, the NLC president, started from. But I would just like to add, by drawing attention to the editorial in today's edition of Thisday, the Sunday newspaper. The editorial is titled Death and the Generals. With a rider, there may be need to review aircraft maintenance schedules and operational procedures in the Air Force. Third crash within 90 days. That's what the Thisday editorial is referring to. And in the concluding paragraph, the newspaper says, meanwhile, We hope the effect of these deaths on the morale and psyche of our troops will not negatively impact the ongoing military operations in the country. With the vacancy now created by the death of the army chief, President Muhammadu Buhari must act swiftly to appoint a replacement. The military is not an institution where you hand over to the next most senior officer, especially in the middle of a war on insurgency. There is need for certainty in the leadership command chain. We also hope the consideration for the choice of who succeeds Attahiru will be based on professionalism and not on any other consideration, so that whoever is chosen can quickly move in to reassure the troops who must now be demoralized with the death of their chief in such a tragic circumstance. This is the newspaper, the Sunday newspaper, writes. If we may just move on very quickly after that opinion. Let's take another subject. The Senate is considering a bill to stop the payment and receipt of ransom for the release of any person kidnapped, imprisoned, or wrongfully confined. The proposed law prescribes a 15-year penalty for anyone who pays or receives ransom. The Terrorism Prevention Amendment Bill 2021, which scaled second reading at Wednesday's plenary, is sponsored by Senator Ezenwa Francis Onyewuchi, who raised the alarm that kidnapping has become a fast and lucrative business that has become pervasive and intractable, leading to violent crimes in the country.
Ransom payments lead to future kidnappings, and future kidnappings lead to additional ransom payment, and it all builds the capacity of terrorist organizations to conduct attacks. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, gut-wrenching as it may be, the wisest thing for government to do would be to keep an eye on statistics, because these show that buying out one victim strengthens and encourages abductors, kidnappers, and terrorist organizations, and thus puts many more people at risk. The continuous payment of ransom must not be encouraged. In addition, government should provide adequate security and strengthen the economy as a matter of urgency.
Payment of ransom is not good, but at the same time, we should encourage the security agents to use technology to track the bandits or the terrorists so that they can easily be arrested and be prosecuted. I believe if we do that, it will go a long way in solving the problem of insurgency, terrorism, and banditry in Nigeria.
A bill for an act to amend the Terrorism Prevention Act 2013 and for other matters connected thereto 2021 second reading taken, and the bill is referred to the Committee on Judiciary, Human Rights and Legal Matters to report back within 4 weeks.
Well, there you have it. Yemi Adamolekun, let me come straight back to you. What are your thoughts on this? 15 years imprisonment being proposed for anyone that pays ransom.
Yeah, see, okay. Why are people paying ransom? People are paying ransom because they want their family members back. And our police are on holiday, our security services are overwhelmed, and our president is absent. But instead of dealing with those fundamental issues, our lawmakers decide that they want to penalize people who pay for wanting their family members back. I'm a bit confused, really just a tad bit confused. So you're now going to penalize the victims rather than dealing with the fundamental issue of insecurity, because in the same National Assembly, a colleague has said we should treat bandits as aggrieved citizens. So this is it now. So let me summarize for you. Same National Assembly, we treat bandits, criminals, let's not forget, as aggrieved citizens who are choosing to kidnap citizens, school children, anybody, because they are upset. And then the same bandits, after we negotiate with them and they release the children and they come back, who they say they've turned a new leaf, now decide, you know what, we are tired, we're going to go back to our old lives. However, the people that want their family members back, same National Assembly, says those are the ones that need to go to jail and be fined. Is that not madness? As in, really, is that not madness? I don't get it. I really don't get it. So the National Assembly, from the man that proposed the bill to members of the National Assembly that are supporting it, people should just call all of them and say, You people, it's as if you are not in this country, that you don't understand what is going on. Yeah, it's a problem. It's just a problem.
Well, indeed.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to my second cousin twice removed. That's the governor of Kaduna State. But this time I'm going to talk about him. So a few weeks ago, he had said that he was going to penalize anybody who paid ransom when that whole scandal was brewing. While I disagreed with him and argued that it was a bit insensitive to make such an utterance, I understood where he was coming from, which is the point that is being made at the Senate. The truth of the matter is, where does it stop? However, I agree with the last speaker that this is the symptoms of a complete failure of governance. The other day, we mentioned on this program that half of our police force are guarding dignitaries. We have only 100,000 policemen guarding everybody else. They're ill-trained. Half of their money disappears. I don't want to say stolen. I don't want to offend anybody. But the truth of the matter is that we understand the society within which we work. Even the plane crashes that we're talking about, is it related to maintenance? Is it related to tip-top shape maintenance where you have 5 checks and balances, even if the last 4 checks and balances seem to be a waste of money? When your budget is tight, what do? I agree with Remy. It is a governance problem, and it's a very interconnected, complex governance problem within the society. Back to the question of whether or not to pay ransom or not to pay ransom. When the whole kidnapping thing, when we realized in Nigeria that it was a national problem, one of the things that came out of that, and I had some disquiet about that, was once you're a kidnapper, the state decides that you kidnapped. It is the death penalty. That was supposed to be a deterrent. Now, not paying is supposed to be a deterrent. I don't know if these policy measures are as well thought out as they should be, because I hear that even policemen have been paying ransom. So I don't know if banning the payment of ransom will make the business, I'm going to call it a business, whether or not it is going to stop or it is going to end. But one bright light behind the kidnapping challenge is that it's a nationwide challenge. At least we cannot tribalize this one. We can't say it's not a spare parts or a cattle rearing problem. So I'm going to stop here. Thank you.
Well, Prof, very quickly, we have less than 2 minutes.
First point. Does the bill talk about 15 years sanction? I think what I read, if I did read it well, it talks about not less than 15 years. That's what they put there.
So it could be more.
So it could be more.
It could be life in prison.
So it is important in the bill, since they've just gone through the second reading, to be emphatic. If it's going to be 20 years, let it be 20 years. If it's going to be death penalty, if it's 50 years, let it be clear. But the discretion should not just be left open by just saying not less than 15 years. You see, Yemi rightly pointed out the critical problem involved. The amendment being sought is only seeking to sanction the reaction and not the action. The reaction of the people who are in trouble and who really want to bail out their people, as distinct from the action of the bandits, the insurgents. Now, the law, the principal law itself, since this bill is just an amendment, now the principal law itself has not prevented the use of terror. So what is the guarantee that an amendment to a principal law that has not been complied with? So I think that, look, we really have a problem there.
Yes, on that note, Prof, we need to take another short break here on Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. With me, I still have Professor Bola Akinterenwa, Dr. Ndidi Nwaneri, and Yemi Adamolekun. Take our final story for the day. Nigeria's Attorney General has stated that the resolve to ban open grazing by southern governors is equivalent to prohibiting spare parts trading in the North and does not align with the provisions of the Constitution. In reaction to the criticism of the open grazing ban by AGF Malami, the Ondo State Governor, Governor Rotimi Akeredolu, said the decision of the Southern governors to enforce the ban on open grazing is irreversible, and the governors will not only enforce the ban with vigor, but are ready to defend the legality of their position in court. According to him, the defense of open grazing by the Attorney General is, we quote, wicked and arrogant, unquote. Well, Professor Akintanewa, let me start with you. This is your governor, right? Governor Akeredolu.
I think that it's a governor that is actually presenting the attitudinal disposition of a typical Ondo man, Ondo State. And we can commend him. The conversation between him and the Attorney General of the Federation, Malami, clearly shows that the Attorney General, all right, because of what he wants to eat, is unable to see clearly. What he wants to eat does not allow him to address issues. And if I were in his position, on the basis of the three critical issues raised by Akeredolu, I will resign as an Attorney General. First of all, Akeredolu drew his attention to his inability to distinguish between a non-injurious and legitimate business of spare parts and a certain predilection for anarchy. Secondly, he says he suffers from inability to distinguish or to distill issues expected of a son, a senior advocate of Nigeria. A senior advocate of Nigeria is supposed to have a deep-seated mind and not a shallow set of mind. I had the opportunity just yesterday. We have Olusegun Fabumi, who was giving a Thanksgiving service in the church. And I could see many judges there, and they were now teaching us, telling us in the church, the attributes of a son that is not meant for a Dick and Harry. Right? When you are a senior advocate of Nigeria, that means you are an institution on yourself. And that's for Olusegun Fabumi, who was thanking God yesterday. So if an Akeredolu is now saying, look, this is not expected of his son. Now the third point, he tries to say that, Malami, you are suffering from myopia of not being able to see Nigeria's model of animal husbandry as injurious to the development of harmonious ties between herders and farmers. And in his eyes, he said, I quote, wicked and arrogant. I am not unaware of the fact that Malami was certainly well qualified. If he had been given the title son, it is not because he's not sagacious enough. But in this case, it is simply because what he wants to eat does not allow him to be objective. That's his problem.
Well, I don't know, Prof, where you came up with this theory of what he wants to eat. But I guess, some people will accuse him of playing ethnic politics, and that the office of the Attorney General of the Federation should not be used to play ethnic politics.
I cannot agree more with you.
Whatsoever. And that's why there's the argument that the office of the Attorney General of the Federation, who is Chief Law Officer of the Federation, should be separated from that of the Minister of Justice. But quickly, Yemi Adamoleko,
you cannot be more correct.
Prof. Yemi, quickly,
Thank you.
we have
I think
just about 5 minutes to
I'll
go.
start with that. Either way, even if the offices are still combined, neither the minister nor the Attorney General of the Federation should be playing ethnic politics. And in Mr. Malami's statement, that was clearly what he was doing, which is, no, I mean, not only is it unfortunate, to be quite frank, where we are now, I'm not sure I'm actually surprised. We still have the issue of Mr. Pantami on the table and his own ideological beliefs and what that means for a Minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I would also disagree with Prof because Mr. Malami has shown not this, but over during his tenure as Attorney General of the Federation, that he does not have the capacity or the competence to not only hold that office, but also by extension, it calls his SAN-ish sandship or whatever they call it into question. Because over and over again, decisions and utterances from his mouth has completely put that office to ridicule. And I'm very glad that Governor Attahiru even made that point in his statement. And then lastly, what is the whole essence of Ruga? Is the point of Ruga not creating places where headsmen can ranch or ranching or whatever, sort of a more controlled form of ranching? So if the federal government thinks we should go towards the way of Ruga and we're looking for land or special land to do that, and Governor Attahiru is saying we're not going to allow open grazing, is that not the same thing? But the minister decides he wants to make a statement to that. And I'm glad, and the way that the governor of Ondo State ended it, that Mr. Malami is advised to approach the court to challenge the legality of the laws of the respective states banning open grazing and the decision of the Southern Governors Forum. We shall be most willing to meet him in court. I mean, this just makes a mockery of what is such a simple issue. And then again, to the point where a private business is now taking on as an issue that our Attorney General of Federation, when there are more grievous issues, is worried about.
Well, very quickly, let's just make the point that the Attorney General was referring to the Constitution, obviously Section 41. Section 41 talks about every citizen being able to enjoy the freedom of movement. It does not talk about cattle. And the analogy with spare parts dealership, I think is entirely misplaced. Over to you, Dr. Nwaneri.
We have very little time for the rest of the program. It was very disheartening that cattle was compared to spare parts. The parallel there is Hausa-Yoruba conflict. Shouldn't come out of somebody who occupies any kind of leadership position, even in the private sector. One of the things I'd like to point out, Nigerians, please remember that a lot of the cattle you see in the South actually belongs to Southerners. A lot of people invest in cattle. I'm Igbo. If there's money to be made somewhere, Igbo man's money is inside. So all this one that we're presuming that every cattle belongs to somebody from north of the Niger is totally wrong. It is a business. So that further underlines.
They are not on the street. They are in the forest, in the bush.
Well,
if not,
I'm talking about ownership. Another thing we do not talk about in Nigeria is global warming. The reason why we're falling out in the first place is because the cattle rearing or cattle herding relied on a certain amount of food for the cattle. All of that is shrinking because of global warming. Again, policy failure. 20 years ago, the world knew that this contraction was going to happen with regards to anything that grows on the road, including grass.
What has that one got to do with the carriage of AK-47?
Cattle rustling is the reason why some people carry ammunition.
Is the insecurity.
If people have been stealing your cattle, you will carry ammunition. I am not justifying it, but this is part of the story we do not include in this dialogue. People steal cattle. They rustle cattle.
No, we are talking about the insecurity.
Anyway. I will have to end here.
So, no, don't end there. So, you see the problem is not having cattle belonging to XYZ. The issue is that you own cattle, and those who are herding, moving here and they also carry weapons and using that weapon to kill people. To rape, to do all along.
That is not my perception.
Prof, and yes, precisely.
Prof and Dr. Nwaneri, we have to wrap up here.
We have to wrap up.
Before we go and cut Sweet 16, Dr. Ndidi Nwaneri's birthday cake. That's the next assignment off camera. Anyway, you've been watching Thisday Live, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abachi. From my entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now. And thank you very much for watching. We'll see you again next Sunday.